The night sky was dotted with stars as Jasmine Bennett drove her blue Honda Civic down Main Street. The clock on her dashboard read 11:30 p.m. She'd spent hours at the university library, surrounded by law books and sticky notes, preparing for her upcoming exams. Her eyes were tired, but her mind was sharp. She just wanted to get home, make a cup of tea, and fall into bed. The street was mostly empty at this hour. Jasmine noticed a deep pothole ahead, the kind that had damaged many cars in the neighborhood. She carefully steered around it, her car briefly crossing the white line before returning to her lane. In her rearview mirror, she suddenly saw flashing blue and red lights. Her heart jumped a little, but she wasn't worried. She hadn't been speeding. Jasmine pulled over right away, placing her hands on the steering wheel where they could be seen. Her mother had taught her this when she first got her license. "Always keep your hands visible," she'd said with a seriousness that Jasmine understood without needing further explanation. Through her side mirror, she watched as Officer Derek Wilson stepped out of his patrol car. He was tall with broad shoulders, and he walked with a swagger that made Jasmine feel uneasy. She rolled down her window as he approached. "License and registration," he demanded without greeting her. His flashlight beam hit her eyes directly, making her squint. "Good evening, officer," Jasmine said politely, reaching slowly for her glove compartment. "May I ask why I was pulled over?" Officer Wilson's face hardened. "You were swerving all over the road. Have you been drinking tonight?" Jasmine blinked in surprise. "No, sir. I was avoiding a pothole. I'm coming home from studying at the university library." The officer scoffed. "Right, the university. Sure." His tone made it clear he didn't believe her. She handed over her license and registration with steady hands. "I'm a pre-law student at State University. I was studying for my constitutional law exam." Officer Wilson took her documents and studied them with narrowed eyes. He spoke into his radio, calling for backup. Within minutes, another patrol car pulled up, and Officer Ryan Collins joined his colleague. "Step out of the vehicle," Officer Wilson ordered. "May I ask why?" Jasmine questioned, confusion and the first seeds of fear growing inside her. "Because I told you to," he snapped. "When an officer gives you an order, you follow it." Jasmine carefully opened her door and stepped out. The night air was cool against her skin. A few cars drove past, slowing down to watch what was happening. "I'm going to need you to take a sobriety test," Officer Wilson said, his hand resting on his holster in a way that seemed unnecessarily threatening. "I haven't been drinking," Jasmine explained calmly, though her heart was racing now. "I was just avoiding a pothole back there." The two officers exchanged glances. Officer Collins smirked. "They all say that," he remarked loudly enough for her to hear. While Officer Wilson walked back to his car with her documents, Officer Collins stood watching her with crossed arms. Jasmine could hear them talking, their voices low but carrying enough in the quiet night. "Another one of these fancy students who think they own the road," Officer Wilson said. Officer Collins laughed. "Wonder where she got that car from. Doesn't look like student budget to me." Their words stung, but Jasmine stood silently, trying to keep her breathing steady. She checked her watch. It was now almost midnight. Her mother would be wondering where she was. When Officer Wilson returned, his attitude had only worsened. The flashlight beam danced across her face again, deliberately blinding her. "I'm going to need you to walk in a straight line for me," he demanded. "Then we'll see about your story of avoiding potholes." Jasmine nodded, knowing that arguing would only make things worse. As she prepared to follow his instructions, she couldn't help wondering why a simple drive home had turned into this nightmare. Little did she know, this was just the beginning of a night that would change not only her life, but the entire city's approach to policing. Jasmine stood on the side of the road, the cold night air seeping through her thin sweater. The streetlights cast long shadows across the pavement as cars occasionally drove by, their headlights briefly illuminating the scene before disappearing into the darkness again. "Walk heel to toe in a straight line," Officer Wilson commanded, pointing to an imaginary line on the asphalt. His voice had a harsh edge that made Jasmine's stomach tighten. She did as she was told, carefully placing one foot in front of the other. Her sneakers scuffed against the rough pavement as she concentrated on keeping her balance, very aware of the officer's eyes on her. "She's definitely hiding something," Officer Collins muttered to his partner, just loud enough for Jasmine to hear. Look at her, all nervous. Jasmine completed the walk without a single misstep. I told you I haven't been drinking, she said, her voice steady despite her growing unease. Officer Wilson frowned, clearly disappointed by her perfect performance. Now I need you to stand on one leg and count to 30. While Jasmine performed this test, the officers stepped a few feet away, talking between themselves. They thought they were speaking quietly, but their words carried in the still night air. These college types think they're so special, Officer Wilson said, leaning against his patrol car. Driving around in cars their parents probably bought them. Officer Collins nodded, taking a sip from his coffee thermos. Yeah, and this one's got an attitude. You see how she looked at you when you asked for her license? I know that look, Wilson replied. They teach them at those fancy schools to question everything. No respect anymore. A red pickup truck slowed as it passed by. The driver, an older man with gray hair, watched the scene with concern before continuing down the road. Soon after, a young couple walking their dog passed by on the opposite sidewalk. They paused, the woman pulling out her phone and seeming to record the interaction. Jasmine noticed this and felt a small measure of relief. Witnesses meant safety. Officer Wilson noticed too. Hey, he called out to the couple. Move along. Police business. The couple hesitated but eventually continued walking, though more slowly, glancing back over their shoulders. Jasmine completed the one-leg stand test perfectly as well. Officer Wilson's frustration was visible on his face as he walked back to her. Touch your nose with your finger, eyes closed, he demanded, adding yet another test that wasn't standard procedure. Officer, Jasmine said, trying to keep her voice respectful but firm, I've completed 2 sobriety tests without any issues. I wasn't drinking or doing anything wrong. I was just avoiding a pothole. Officer Wilson's face darkened. Are you refusing to cooperate? Because that's grounds for arrest. No, sir, Jasmine quickly replied, closing her eyes and touching her nose as instructed. Officer Collins walked a slow circle around her, his boots crunching on the gravel shoulder of the road. Nice clothes for a student. Nice watch too. Where'd you get that watch? It was a graduation gift from my mother, Jasmine answered, her eyes still closed as instructed. Must be nice, Collins remarked with a sneer. Some people get watches, others get the night shift. When she opened her eyes, Officer Wilson was scowling at her. Something's not adding up here. What's in your trunk? Just my backpack and some books, Jasmine answered truthfully. We're going to need to search your vehicle, Wilson stated, not asking permission. Don't I have the right to refuse an unwarranted search? Jasmine asked, immediately regretting the words as they left her mouth. Her pre-law knowledge had slipped out before she could stop it. Officer Wilson's eyebrows shot up. Oh, so you're a lawyer now? Think you know the law better than me? No, sir, Jasmine said quickly. I just... Pop the trunk, he interrupted, his tone leaving no room for argument. 2 more cars slowed as they passed by. In one, a woman in the passenger seat held up her phone, clearly recording. In the other, the driver honked briefly, a sound that seemed to ask if everything was okay. Officer Wilson's hand moved to rest on his holster again. I said pop the trunk. Now. Jasmine walked slowly back to her car, feeling the situation spinning further out of control. What had started as a simple traffic stop was turning into something much more frightening. She had done nothing wrong, yet with each passing minute, the officers seemed more determined to find, or create, a reason to justify their actions. As she reached for her keys, Jasmine wondered how much worse this night could possibly get. She had no idea that the answer was much worse before it got better. Jasmine's hands trembled slightly as she opened the trunk of her car. Inside was exactly what she had said, her worn backpack stuffed with textbooks, a gym bag with her running shoes, and a stack of library books with yellow sticky notes poking out from the pages. Officer Wilson rummaged through her belongings without care, flipping through her notebooks and tossing her carefully organized study materials aside. He pulled out her constitutional law textbook, thick and heavy with highlighted passages. Lot of big words in here, he said, thumbing through the pages before dropping it back into the trunk with a thud. You actually understand all this? I'm trying to, Jasmine replied quietly, watching as the hours she'd spent organizing her notes were undone in seconds. By now, traffic had picked up despite the late hour. Friday night meant people heading home from restaurants and bars. A small crowd had begun to gather on the sidewalk across the street. 3 young men and a middle-aged woman with a dog on a leash. All of them had phones out, recording the scene. Officer Collins noticed the growing audience and nudged his partner. "We've got an audience, Derek." Officer Wilson straightened up and called out to the bystanders, "Move along, folks. Nothing to see here." But nobody moved. The presence of witnesses gave Jasmine a small comfort, even as her embarrassment grew. "Found nothing in the trunk," Wilson announced, slamming it shut with unnecessary force. "Let's see what's in the car." He ordered Jasmine to stand by Officer Collins while he searched her car, pulling open the glove compartment and digging through the center console. Finding nothing but registration papers, insurance documents, and a half-eaten pack of mints, his frustration visibly grew. "Step into the light," Officer Wilson commanded, pointing to the bright beam of the street lamp. When Jasmine complied, he said, "Your eyes look red. Have you been smoking something tonight?" "No," Jasmine said firmly. "My eyes are red because I've been studying for hours. I told you I was at the library." Officer Collins snickered. "The library? On a Friday night? Sure." A passing truck humped twice, the driver slowing down enough to yell, "Leave car alone," before continuing down the road. Officer Wilson's face flushed with anger. He pointed at Jasmine. "I'm going to need you to walk the line again. And this time, I want you to recite the alphabet backward while you do it." "That's not a standard sobriety test," Jasmine said before she could stop herself. "Excuse me." Wilson stepped closer, invading her personal space. "Are you telling me how to do my job?" "No, sir." Jasmine backpedaled, feeling the situation slipping further out of control. "Then walk the line and say the alphabet backward. Now." The growing crowd of onlookers murmured among themselves. Someone called out, "This isn't right." Another voice added, "We're watching you, officers." Jasmine began the impossible task, trying to concentrate on walking straight while also attempting to work her way backward from Z to A. She stumbled over the letters, mixing up P and Q, which made Officer Wilson smirk. "See that? Confusion. Classic sign of impairment." "It's a sign that saying the alphabet backward is difficult for anyone," Jasmine countered, immediately regretting speaking up again. Officer Wilson's radio crackled, and a female voice came through. "Dispatch to Unit 47. Status update. Unit 47 here. Conducting a field sobriety test. Possible DUI and attitude problem." He emphasized the last 2 words while staring directly at Jasmine. "Copy that. Do you need female officer assistance?" Officer Wilson looked Jasmine up and down. "Actually, yes. Send Officer Chen for a pat-down search." Jasmine's heart sank. "A pat-down? On what grounds?" "Suspicious behavior," Wilson replied curtly. "And now you're questioning an officer again, which makes me even more suspicious." The crowd across the street had grown to about a dozen people now. Some were filming, others were calling out questions and comments. One bold woman shouted, "What's her crime?" "Driving while black." Officer Collins stepped toward the crowd. "Stand back. This is police business." Jasmine stood alone in the harsh spotlight of the street lamp, feeling exposed and vulnerable. Cars continued to slow as they passed, creating a traffic jam of curiosity. She looked at her watch. It had been nearly an hour since she was first pulled over. What should have been a 5-minute interaction at most had turned into a public spectacle. As she waited for the female officer to arrive, Jasmine closed her eyes briefly, taking a deep breath to calm herself. She had done nothing wrong, yet here she was, being treated like a criminal, and the night was far from over. The female officer, Officer Chen, arrived 10 minutes later. She was shorter than the 2 male officers, with her dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her expression was neutral as she approached Jasmine, neither friendly nor hostile. "Turn around, feet apart, hands against the car," she instructed in a businesslike tone. Jasmine complied, placing her palms flat against the cool metal of her car. Officer Chen conducted the pat-down quickly and professionally, finding nothing of interest. "She's clean," Officer Chen reported to Wilson and Collins. Officer Wilson frowned, clearly disappointed by the lack of incriminating evidence. Fine, but I still don't like her story. Nobody studies that late on a Friday. The crowd across the street had grown to nearly 20 people now. Some were filming with their phones, while others called out words of support to Jasmine. The situation was becoming a neighborhood spectacle. "Can I make a phone call?" Jasmine asked, her voice steadier than she felt inside. "My mom will be worried." "I should have been home an hour ago." Officer Wilson checked his watch and sighed dramatically. "Fine. One call. Make it quick." He'd handed Jasmine her phone from the passenger seat of her car. With slightly trembling fingers, she dialed her mother's number. It was nearly 1 a.m. now, but she knew her mom would be awake and worried. Diana Bennett answered on the first ring. "Jasmine, where are you? I've been calling for hours." "Mom," Jasmine said, trying to keep her voice calm. "I'm okay. I got pulled over on Main Street near Wilson Avenue. They've had me doing sobriety tests for almost an hour now." "What? Why? You don't drink." Her mother's voice was sharp with concern. "I know, Mom. I was just avoiding a pothole, but they say I was swerving." Jasmine glanced at Officer Wilson, who was standing close enough to hear every word. "Put the officer on the phone," Diana demanded. "He's right here, but—" "Now, Jasmine." Jasmine held out the phone to Officer Wilson. "My mother would like to speak with you." Wilson rolled his eyes and took the phone, holding it to his ear with obvious annoyance. "This is Officer Wilson." Jasmine couldn't hear what her mother was saying, but she could see the officer's face change as he listened. His eyebrows furrowed, then rose in surprise. "Yes, ma'am," he said, his tone suddenly more respectful. "We're just following standard procedure when—" He was cut off by whatever her mother was saying. Officer Collins watched with curiosity, moving closer to try to hear the conversation. "Of course, ma'am," Wilson continued, his voice growing quieter. "We're just doing our job. Your daughter was." He stopped again, listening. His free hand fidgeted with his belt. Meanwhile, Officer Collins leaned against the patrol car, making no effort to hide his boredom. "Probably just another angry mama ready to bail out her kid," he muttered, loud enough for Jasmine to hear. Jasmine knew better. Her mother wasn't just any angry parent. Diana Bennett was the first black female mayor of the city, elected last year on a platform that prominently featured police accountability and reform. And from the gradually changing expression on Officer Wilson's face, he was just beginning to realize who he was talking to. "Yes, Mayor Bennett," Wilson said, the title finally escaping his lips as beads of sweat formed on his forehead despite the cool night air. "I understand. We'll wait right here." The word mayor caught Officer Collins' attention. He straightened up immediately, his smirk vanishing. Wilson handed the phone back to Jasmine, his hand noticeably less steady than before. "Mom?" Jasmine said into the phone. "I'm on my way," Diana said firmly. "And I'm bringing Chief Rodriguez with me. Don't say another word to them. I heard enough in the background to know what's been happening." "Okay," Jasmine said, relief flooding through her. "How long?" 10 minutes. "I was already in the car looking for you when you called. Stay strong, baby." Officer Wilson turned to his partner after Jasmine ended the call. "We need to wrap this up. Give her back her license and registration." "What? Why?" Collins asked, confused by the sudden change. Wilson lowered his voice, but Jasmine still caught his words. "That was Mayor Bennett. This is her daughter." Collins' face went pale. "The mayor? The one pushing for those body cam reviews and the Civilian Oversight Committee?" Wilson nodded grimly. "The very same. And she's on her way here right now, with the chief." The crowd across the street seemed to sense the shift in power. Someone called out, "What's happening now?" "She free to go." Jasmine stood still, watching as the officer's confident demeanor crumbled before her eyes. The night wasn't over yet, but the balance had finally tipped in her favor. The atmosphere on the street changed completely in the minutes following the phone call. Officer Wilson and Officer Collins spoke in hushed, urgent tones by their patrol car. Officer Chen stood to the side, looking uncomfortable as she pieced together what was happening. Jasmine leaned against her car, exhausted but finally feeling a sense of relief. The crowd across the street had grown even larger, with some people crossing over to stand closer, sensing that something significant was unfolding. I heard her say, Mayor Bennett. An older woman in the crowd whispered loudly to her companion. That's her daughter. The whispers spread through the onlookers like wildfire. People began pulling out their phones, some texting rapidly, others still recording. Officer Wilson approached Jasmine, holding out her license and registration with a forced smile that didn't reach his eyes. Here are your documents, Miss Bennett. Sorry for the misunderstanding tonight. Is there still a misunderstanding, Officer Wilson? Jasmine asked quietly. Or did you just realize who my mother is? Wilson's smile faltered. We were just doing our job. Standard procedure when we observe erratic driving. I avoided a pothole, Jasmine said, her voice growing stronger. And your standard procedure took merely 2 hours of my night. Before Officer Wilson could respond, 2 black SUVs with tinted windows pulled up to the scene. Their headlights illuminated the street like a stage. From the first SUV stepped Police Chief Rodriguez, a tall man with salt and pepper hair and a serious expression. He was still wearing his uniform despite the late hour, as if he'd been working late at the station. From the second SUV emerged Mayor Diana Bennett. She wore a dark blue pantsuit, her short hair neatly styled despite the late hour. She had clearly come from some official function. Her face was calm, but her eyes blazed with controlled anger as she surveyed the scene. Jasmine, she called, walking straight to her daughter. Mom, Jasmine said, her composure finally cracking as her mother pulled her into a tight hug. Chief Rodriguez approached the officers, who had snapped to attention at his arrival. What's the situation here, Officer Wilson? Sir, we observed Ms. Bennett's vehicle swerving and conducted a routine traffic stop, Wilson explained, his voice unnaturally high. Standard sobriety testing was performed. For nearly 2 hours? The chief asked, checking his watch. Well, sir, there were some complications. I was listening on the phone, Mayor Bennett interrupted, stepping away from her daughter, but keeping a protective arm around her shoulders. I heard Officer Collins make several inappropriate remarks, and I've been getting text messages from constituents for the past hour about this situation. The gathered crowd murmured in agreement. Someone called out, We saw it all, Mayor Bennett. Officer Wilson's face had gone pale. Ma'am, there seems to be a misunderstanding. We were just. Let's not talk about misunderstandings, officer, the mayor cut in, her voice level but firm. Let's talk about body cameras. Yours is on, I presume? Wilson swallowed visibly. Yes, ma'am. Good. And your patrol car dashcam has been recording this entire time as well? Yes, ma'am. Excellent, the mayor said. Then we'll have a complete record of tonight's events to review. Chief Rodriguez turned to Officer Chen. Please see that Ms. Bennett's vehicle is returned to her custody immediately. She's free to go home. Officer Chen nodded quickly. Yes, sir. The mayor turned to address the crowd, who had fallen silent to hear her words. Thank you all for being here tonight, for watching over my daughter. This is exactly why community matters, why accountability matters. People in the crowd nodded and murmured in agreement. Some applauded softly. Officer Wilson stepped forward, sweat visible on his brow despite the cool night air. Mayor Bennett, if I could just explain. Save it for the formal review, officer, Chief Rodriguez interrupted. Report to my office at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Officer Collins, who had been trying to blend into the background, suddenly found himself the focus of the chief's attention. You too, Officer Collins, 9 a.m. The mayor turned back to her daughter. Let's go home, honey. We'll deal with the rest tomorrow. As they walked toward the mayor's SUV, Officer Wilson made one last desperate attempt. Mayor Bennett, please, he called after her. This could be a career-ending misunderstanding. I have a family to support. The mayor stopped and turned slowly. The gathered crowd, the officers, even Chief Rodriguez, all seemed to hold their breath. Officer Wilson, she said clearly, perhaps you should have thought about your career and your family before you decided to harass my daughter tonight. But rest assured, you'll receive exactly what the evidence shows you deserve. Nothing more, nothing less. With that, she guided Jasmine to the SUV, leaving Officer Wilson standing alone under the harsh streetlight, finally understanding the full consequences of his actions. By morning, the video clips had spread across the entire city. People at breakfast tables, on bus rides to work, and in office break rooms were all watching the same footage, Jasmine being forced to perform repeated sobriety tests, the officers mocking her, and finally, the mayor and police chief arriving at the scene. Local news stations played the clips on repeat, with headlines like "Mayor's Daughter Harassed in Traffic Stop" and "Police Officers Face Review After Racial Profiling Incident." At the Bennett household, Jasmine sat at the kitchen table with her mother, both nursing cups of steaming coffee. Neither had slept much. "You don't have to go to class today if you don't feel up to it," Mayor Bennett said, reaching across to squeeze her daughter's hand. Jasmine shook her head. "No, I want to go. I can't hide at home. Besides, I have that constitutional law test to prepare for." She managed a small smile. "Seems more important than ever now." The mayor's phone buzzed constantly with messages and calls. The city was demanding answers, and Diana Bennett intended to provide them. "I've called an emergency meeting with the city council at noon," she told Jasmine. "Chief Rodriguez is reviewing all the footage right now, the body cameras, the dash cam, and all the videos people took on their phones." Across town at the police station, Officer Wilson and Officer Collins sat stiffly in plastic chairs outside the chief's office. Through the glass walls, they could see Chief Rodriguez reviewing footage on his computer, his face growing sterner with each passing minute. Other officers walked by, some avoiding eye contact, while others shot disapproving glances their way. Word had spread quickly through the department. Officer Chen approached, holding a cup of coffee. She stopped in front of the two men. "Just so you know," she said quietly, "what happened last night wasn't right. Not by department standards and not by human standards." She walked away without waiting for a response. Meanwhile, the police union representative, a gray-haired man named Tom Fletcher, paced nearby, talking frantically on his phone. "We need to get ahead of this," he was saying. "Issue a statement about proper procedures and ongoing investigations." At 9 a.m. sharp, Chief Rodriguez's door opened. "Wilson, Collins, in here." Now. Inside the office, the chief gestured to chairs across from his desk. His computer screen was paused on a frame from Wilson's body camera, Jasmine standing in the street light, looking frightened but composed. "I've reviewed all the footage," the chief said, his voice deceptively calm. "Including the comments made when you thought your mics weren't picking up your voices." Officer Wilson shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, in the heat of the moment." The chief held up his hand. "Save it. Both of you are suspended, effective immediately. Turn in your badges and service weapons before you leave." "Suspended," Collins protested, "for a routine traffic stop." Chief Rodriguez leaned forward. There was nothing routine about what happened last night. Ms. Bennett was sober. She had no contraband. She was simply driving home from studying. Yet you detained her for nearly 2 hours, subjected her to unnecessary tests, searched her vehicle without cause, and made racially charged comments throughout. This isn't just about her being the mayor's daughter. This is about how you treat all citizens. At noon, City Hall was packed for the emergency council meeting. Citizens filled every seat, with more standing along the walls. News cameras pointed at the council members' table where Mayor Bennett sat at the center, flanked by Chief Rodriguez and other city officials. "What we witnessed last night," the mayor began, her voice steady, "was not an isolated incident. It was a symptom of a larger problem that many citizens in our community face every day." The room fell silent as she continued. "Today, I am introducing 3 measures for immediate consideration. First, a comprehensive review of all traffic stop procedures. Second, mandatory bias training for all officers to be completed within 60 days. And third, the establishment of a civilian review board with actual enforcement powers." The police union representative rose to object, but the mayor continued. "The footage from last night will be made public this afternoon, with the faces of civilian bystanders blurred for privacy. I believe in transparency. I believe in accountability. And I believe that what happened to my daughter should never happen to anyone else's child, whether they're related to a public official or not." The room erupted in applause. In the back row, Jasmine sat quietly, watching her mother transform a personal injustice into a catalyst for change. Despite the trauma of the previous night, she felt a strange sense of purpose growing within her. Sometimes, she realized, it takes a spotlight on one person's story to illuminate the shadows where many others have suffered in silence. 6 months had passed since that fateful night. The leaves had changed colors, fallen, and now spring buds were appearing on the trees lining Main Street. Jasmine walked confidently down the hallway of City Hall, her heels clicking against the polished floor. Her arms were full of folders containing the latest reports from the newly formed Civilian Review Board. She passed by a wall of framed newspaper headlines. One read, "Officer Wilson terminated following investigation." Another announced, "New police reforms implemented citywide." A third declared, "Our city becomes model for police accountability." Jasmine had changed too. The frightened student from that night had grown into a poised young woman with purpose in her stride. She still attended her law classes, but now she also worked part-time in the city's legal department, helping draft policies that would ensure what happened to her wouldn't happen to others. She knocked on the door of her mother's office before entering. Mayor Bennett was on the phone but waved her daughter in with a smile. "Yes, Governor, I believe our program could work statewide," the mayor was saying. "The results speak for themselves. Complaints are down 40% in just 6 months." She wrapped up the call and turned to Jasmine. "How was your test?" "I think I aced it," Jasmine replied, setting the folders on her mother's desk. "Professor Lin said my analysis of Fourth Amendment protections was the best in class." "I'm not surprised," her mother said proudly. "You've lived it now." A knock on the door interrupted them. Chief Rodriguez entered, looking more relaxed than he had in months. "The numbers for the first quarter are in," he announced. "Traffic stops are down, but successful arrests for serious crimes are up. The targeted approach is working better than the old dragnet methods." "And the officers?" Mayor Bennett asked. "Morale was rocky at first," the chief admitted. "Change is hard. But the good officers, and that's most of them, they appreciate having clear guidelines now. The new body camera review process actually protects them too." Jasmine thought about Officer Chen, who had been promoted to lead the department's new community engagement unit. She had visited Jasmine's law class last week to speak about police procedures and citizen rights. The students had been full of questions, and Officer Chen had answered each one honestly, even the tough ones. As for Officer Collins, he had served his suspension and returned to the force after completing extensive retraining. He wasn't the same officer he had been before. The experience had humbled him. Last month, Jasmine had spotted him helping an elderly black woman change her tire in the rain. People could change when given the right motivation and support. That evening, Jasmine drove home along the same route where she'd been stopped 6 months ago. When she saw police lights in her rearview mirror, her heart still jumped, but not with the same fear as before. The police car passed her, heading to some other call. The pothole that started it all had been filled. A small thing, really, but sometimes big changes started with fixing the small problems that everyone had simply driven around for years. At home, Jasmine found a letter in her mailbox. It was from the State Bar Association, offering her a summer internship in their Civil Rights Division. They had specifically mentioned her experience and advocacy work as factors in their selection. She sat on her front steps, reading the letter in the fading evening light. A neighbor walked by with her dog and waved. "Saw you on the news again," the woman called out. "You're making us all proud." Jasmine smiled and waved back. The television interviews and newspaper features had been uncomfortable at first. She hadn't wanted to be the face of this issue. But her mother had helped her see that her story gave people something concrete to rally around. Statistics didn't move people to action the way a real person's experience could. Her phone buzzed with a text message from her study group. "Meeting tomorrow to prep for finals? We need your brain." Life went on. She was still a student with exams to pass, but she was something more now too, someone who had taken a painful experience and channeled it into positive change. That night, as she prepared her notes for tomorrow's study session, Jasmine thought about how one moment can alter a life's path. 6 months ago, she'd been studying constitutional law as an academic exercise. Now she understood that rights weren't just words on paper. They were daily battles fought in streets, courtrooms, and city halls across the country. The system wasn't perfect yet, not by a long shot, but in her city on her watch, it had taken a meaningful step forward. And sometimes that's how progress worked: one step, one story, one changed mind at a time.